Flags represents a fraction of the number of lives our country has lost due to COVID-19. 20,000 flags have been placed on the northeast quadrant of the Washington Monument. Quite a sight there. It's a reminder of the more than 200,000 Americans who have died from the virus since March. More than 6,700 people in Georgia are among the 200,000 Americans who have died from the virus since March in the United States. Today, the Department of Public Health reports another 96 deaths. Our number started decreasing in the beginning of the month, but over the course of the past week, reports of deaths are now going up once again. After an extremely low number yesterday, there are 1,400 new COVID-19 cases today. It is still well below our current average. That's the dotted line. Cases continue to trend downwards in Georgia, which is a good sign. Doctors say risk is heightened because the fall and winter months mean people are going to be spending more time indoors where the virus can spread more easily. We're also about to start flu season, as you know. Experts warn the combination of the two could overload hospitals.